An arrogant HOA president dumped trash on an honest working man's property, never imagining he owned a backhoe. When confronted, she denied everything. What she didn't count on was his determination to seek justice. Fate had a lesson in store that would change life in the condo complex forever. A story about injustice, persistence, and the sweet reward of truth. Get ready for a surprising twist. Leave a like and comment. What would you do in this situation? Have you ever felt like dropping a backhoe on someone? No? Just me? Then let me tell you a story that will make you understand that feeling exactly. A story about how some HOA president, full of herself, thought she could turn the land I sweated blood for 15 years to buy into her condo's private dump. Poor thing. She just forgot one tiny detail. I have a backhoe and plenty of patience. It was one of those perfect Saturdays, you know? Sun shining, birds singing, and there I was on the porch of my newly built house in Willow Creek, drinking my coffee with a piece of corn muffin that Mrs. Martha, my 78-year-old neighbor, had made for me. Nothing can ruin this day, I thought, innocent as a kid on the first day of school. That's when I saw it, and my blood boiled instantly. A mountain, I'm not exaggerating, a mountain of trash bags on my empty lot next door. The lot I bought after saving penny by penny for 15 years. The lot where I planned to build my workshop. The lot that was my sweat materialized into a deed. I slammed my mug down on the table so hard I almost broke the china my mother had given me. Calm down. I took a deep breath. A bunch of trash bags isn't going to get under my skin, I tried to convince myself as I pulled on my boots and marched over there like a soldier going to war. When I got closer, the situation was even worse. It wasn't just household garbage. There was construction debris, broken furniture, even a toilet bowl, yes, a toilet bowl, dumped there as if my lot was the new Harmony Creek City dump. And the best part? A little note pinned to one of the trash bags, handwritten in fancy script. I picked up the paper and read it aloud. Abandoned lot is for trash. Signed, HOA President, Primrose Estates. Primrose Estates, that pretentious condo complex they'd built across the street. With those high walls painted egg yolk yellow and that gold plaque at the entrance. As if a fancy name and fresh paint could hide the cracks that I, as a contractor for over 20 years, knew darn well existed underneath. I looked at the note again, then at my lot, and then at my house, where I could see my late father's backhoe, parked in the yard. My work tool, my livelihood, and in that moment almost my murder weapon. Because, let's be honest, my dear friends listening now, which one of you hasn't wanted to teach a lesson to some nasty piece of work who thought they had the right to walk all over what's yours? Who waved her perfectly manicured finger and decided she could step on you? Just because you don't wear high heels or have your family name on the condo sign. But I'm a 42-year-old man, born, raised, and hardened by a small-town upbringing. My dad taught me two things in life: how to operate a backhoe and how to have strategic patience. Son, he'd say while fixing the engine of our old machine, revenge is like brewing strong coffee. You serve it hot, but only after letting the water get just right. So I took a deep breath, 3 times, and instead of doing what my gut was telling me, which was to scoop up all that trash and dump it at the front gate of Primrose Estates, I decided I was going to handle this like an adult, or at least try. I tucked the note into the pocket of my worn-out jeans, straightened my flannel shirt, ran a hand through my thinning hair, and walked decisively towards the neighboring complex. You should have seen the gate guard's face when I announced, "I need to speak with the HOA president, please." My voice was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that's scarier than shouting. "She's in a meeting in the clubhouse, sir," the young man replied. A skinny kid who couldn't have been more than 20 and looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world than standing in that guardhouse. "Then that's where I'm going," I replied, and before he could stop me, I walked past the gate arm like I owned the place. The clubhouse was right near the entrance, a round building with large windows and a shiny sign, Primrose, Community Area, Community. The irony wasn't lost on me. When I walked in, about 15 residents were sitting in white plastic chairs, all facing a woman in her mid-40s, brown hair pulled back in a bun so tight it looked like it was stretching her skin. She wore a navy blue pantsuit that tried to scream authority, but only managed to whisper, "Trying too hard." "Excuse me," I said, interrupting what seemed to be an enthusiastic monologue about the new paint job for the pool area. "I'm the owner of the lot next door, the one you seem to have mistaken for a garbage dump." The silence that fell in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. 15 pairs of eyes turned to me, most with expressions like they'd been caught with their hand in the cookie jar. The woman in the bun, who I assumed was the HOA president, looked me up and down as if I were one of the trash bags she'd ordered dumped on my property. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, crossing her arms over her chest. "Who are you anyway?" "I'm the owner of the lot where someone dumped half a ton of trash and left this neatly written little note." I pulled the paper from my pocket and held it up for everyone to see. "Signed by the HOA president of Primrose Estates. Unless there's another president around here, I'm looking at the person responsible." She didn't even blink. "That abandoned lot? I thought it was public land. It's overgrown with weeds, not properly fenced. A real eyesore for our upscale neighborhood." Upscale neighborhood, I almost laughed. Willow Creek had been around for 3 generations. My grandparents helped build the first houses there. Primrose Estates had shown up maybe 3 years ago and already wanted to call the shots. "That lot has an owner, Ma'am. It has a deed, property taxes paid up, and an approved city permit for commercial construction. What it doesn't have is permission to be your condo's private landfill." An older gentleman with white hair, sitting in the front row, cleared his throat. "Marcia, didn't you tell us the city had authorized using that area for temporary disposal?" Temporary disposal? My jaw almost hit the floor. The woman, Marcia, now I knew her name, adjusted her blazer and smiled. A smile as phony as a $3 bill. There must have been a misunderstanding, certainly. "We are having issues with the special pickup for construction debris, and since that lot looked abandoned..." "Looked abandoned to whom, Marcia?" I cut her off. "Because I was there yesterday afternoon, clearing weeds. My workshop project breaks ground in 2 weeks. Do you really think anyone would believe that a clean lot, with taxes paid and private property signs, is abandoned?" The residents started murmuring, shifting uncomfortably. An elderly lady in the back shook her head disapprovingly. At least, not everyone there seemed to go along with that craziness. "Look here, Mr. What was your name again?" the president asked, visibly irritated that I was exposing her lie in front of everyone. "Carlos," I replied. "Carlos Silva, contractor, resident of Willow Creek for 42 years, taxpayer, and a citizen who doesn't like his property being invaded and disrespected." "Mr. Silva," she resumed, her tone as artificial as the red fingernails drumming on the table in front of her. "I can assure you there was a mistake. I'll arrange for the debris to be removed by Monday," I finished, "because on Tuesday my construction starts, and if there's a single plastic bag there, even a candy wrapper, I'm filing formal complaints with the police, the DA's office, and the Environmental Protection Department. Illegal dumping is an environmental crime, you know. Carries heavy fines and even jail time." The murmuring in the room grew louder. It's one thing to dump trash on a neighbor's lot. It's another thing to find out it could land you in jail. Marcia looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. "There's no need to be so dramatic, Mr. Silva. We're civilized people here." "Civilized people don't dump trash on other people's property, Marcia," I replied, already turning to leave. "Monday. Until then." And I walked out of that clubhouse feeling all eyes on my back. Some surprised, others ashamed, and one, hers, shooting. Daggers at the back of my head. I went home feeling a little better. I had laid my cards on the table, been direct, given a reasonable deadline. Problem solved, right? Oh, my innocence. If I had known that was just the first round of a war that would last 6 months, maybe I would have driven my backhoe straight into the clubhouse that very day. Because on Monday morning, when I woke up, the trash was gone, but in its place was more trash. This time, remnants of what looked like a party. Plastic cups, paper plates, used napkins, even a torn banner that read, "Happy Birthday." The rest had been ripped off. "This is a declaration of war," I muttered to myself, looking at that new pile of junk on my lot. And war was what we had for the next 6 months. If there's one thing that irritates me more than injustice, it's people who think they can walk all over me and get away with it. My dad was like that too. Maybe it's a Silva thing, this stubborn streak that doesn't take crap from anyone. Or maybe it's just that small-town blood, the kind that simmers slowly, but once it boils, it doesn't cool down easily. That same day, I went down to Old Man Hemlock's hardware store and bought a hardcover notebook. I was going to document everything. Every trash bag, every piece of debris, every shred of evidence that this HOA president was turning my lot into her complex's private dump. "Having trouble with Marcia, are you?" asked Old Man Hemlock as he handed me my change, a man nearing 70, bald with a white mustache that seemed to have a life of its own. "How did you know?" I asked, surprised. "Everyone in Harmony Creeks had trouble with Marcia, son," he replied, laughing. "She took over Primrose Estates 3 months ago and has already picked fights with half the town. Last week she fined Mrs. Josie because her 5-year-old grandson was playing in the common area after 8 p.m. Why wasn't I surprised? Some people seem born with the mission to make others' lives hell, and HOA President Marcia seemed to have embraced that mission with enthusiasm. In the following days, I established a routine. Every evening after work on the new supermarket construction on Main Avenue, I'd stop by my lot. I'd photograph any new trash that had appeared, jot it down in my notebook and clean it all up. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing my lot turn into a mountain of filth. The first week, trash appeared 3 times. The second week, 4 times. The third week, there was something new every single day. It was as if the president was testing my patience, seeing how long I could take it before I exploded. The problem is, Harmony Creek is a small town, the kind where everybody knows everybody and gossip spreads like wildfire. I soon found out why my complaints at City Hall weren't going anywhere. Marcia was the deputy mayor's sister-in-law, married to his brother for 20 years. Small-town politics, I grumbled to myself as I tore up another notice from City Hall claiming they hadn't found sufficient evidence of illegal dumping. Of course they hadn't. The trash magically disappeared every time an inspector showed up. It was around then that I met Helen, a lady with grey hair, purple-rimmed glasses, and a stance that said, "Don't give me any nonsense." She was watching me as I cleaned up yet another batch of trash from my lot. "The folks from the condo seem to think this place is a dump," I commented, more to myself than to her. "It's not the folks from the condo," she replied, startling me. I hadn't realized she could hear me. "It's Marcia and those stooges she calls her board." I stopped gathering the plastic bags and looked closer at the woman. She must have been around 70, but she had a sparkle in her eyes that many 20-year-olds lack. "Do you live over there?" I asked, pointing towards Primrose Estates. "Unfortunately," she sighed, "I moved in a year ago after my husband passed away. My son thought it would be safer for a woman my age to live in a gated community." She made air quotes around woman, my age, and I couldn't help but smile. "And what do you think about this business of dumping trash on my lot?" "I think it's outrageous," she answered without hesitation, "but it doesn't surprise me." Marcia convinced the board to cut costs on the special waste collection, said she had an alternative solution that would save money for the HOA budget. Alternative solution? Using my lot as a private dump to save on collection fees. That was worse than I imagined. It wasn't just spite, it was pure greed. "You wouldn't happen to be a lawyer, would you?" I asked, a plan already forming in my head. She smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through the clouds. "Retired lawyer, 40 years in practice, specialized in environmental and land use law." Why? At that moment, I was sure someone up there was looking out for me. Maybe it was my dad, laughing at the mess I was in and deciding to lend a hand. "Helen," I replied, extending my dirt-covered hand to her, "I think you just became my legal advisor." And so began our partnership. Every afternoon after I finished cleaning the lot, Helen would show up with her own notebook, a thermos of chamomile tea and the legal knowledge of 4 decades. We'd sit on 2 makeshift stools I'd made from scrap wood, and she'd explain step by step how to build a case against the HOA president. "This is an environmental crime, son," she'd say while sipping her tea, "causing pollution that can result in harm to human health or cause significant damage to flora or fauna." "And does that mean jail time?" I asked, already picturing Marcia's face behind bars. "It means jail time, fines, and a whole lot of headaches," she answered with a mischievous smile. "But we need solid proof. Your word against hers won't count for much, especially with her brother-in-law at City Hall." And so, as the calendar turned and the seasons changed, our little Cold War continued. I cleaned the lot, photographed, everything, noted it in my notebook. Helen guided me legally, and President Marcia kept sending more and more trash. What she didn't know was that I wasn't just cleaning the lot. I was preparing, gathering evidence, building a case, and waiting for the right moment to act. Like my dad always said, "Son, at the right moment the backhoe comes into play." With October came the rains, and with the rains the problems multiplied. The accumulated trash started creating a health hazard. Mosquitoes appeared, those tiny ones like flying needles. The smell wasn't great. Some condo residents started complaining about viruses, rashes, allergic reactions. Helen told me everything. Like a true inside spy, she attended the HOA meetings and then relayed every detail, every complaint, every dirty look the president received. "She's losing support," Helen told me one particularly rainy afternoon, as we sheltered under the makeshift awning I'd set up on the lot. 3 residents had to go to the hospital with dengue fever. They're blaming the dump that popped up next door. "But doesn't she realize she created the problem herself?" I asked, incredulous at the president's ability to shoot herself in the foot. "Narcissists never think they're the problem," Helen replied, with the wisdom of someone who'd seen a lot in life. "She's blaming you for not keeping your lot clean, can you believe it?" I laughed, a bitter laugh, the kind that escapes when a situation is so absurd you don't know whether to cry or roar with laughter. "We need more concrete evidence," I insisted. "Photos and notes won't do much if we don't catch someone red-handed." That's when I had an idea that would completely change the course of that silent war. Remember I said I'm a contractor? Well, I have friends in all corners of the construction business, including one who works with security systems. The next day, we installed hidden cameras at strategic points on the lot, small, discreet, with night vision. The kind of equipment you wouldn't notice unless you were specifically looking for it. Now all we had to do was wait for someone to fall into the trap. It didn't take long. 2 days after installing the cameras at 3 in the morning, 3 a.m., look at the level of premeditation. We caught 2 condo employees dumping debris on my lot. And they weren't alone. Supervising everything, wearing that same navy blue pantsuit and holding a cell phone was her, Marcia, the HOA president from hell. When I saw the footage the next morning, I almost jumped for joy. It was like winning the lottery, only better. Because it wasn't money I wanted, it was justice. "We got her," I exclaimed to Helen, showing her the video on my phone. The quality wasn't great because of the darkness, but you could perfectly make out the faces. "Now what?" Helen adjusted her glasses and examined the footage carefully. Then she smiled that way only someone with 70 years of wisdom can smile. "Now, my dear, we're going to be smarter than her. We're not going to the police just yet." "No?" I admit I was disappointed. After months of putting up with this nonsense, the only thing I wanted was to see that stuck-up president embarrassed down at the police station. "No," Helen confirmed. "We're going to the HOA board. We're going to show them how the president is putting all the residents in legal jeopardy. Environmental crimes don't just affect the perpetrator, they affect everyone jointly liable. And you know who's jointly liable in this case?" "The condo residents," I replied, starting to understand her plan. "Exactly. Every single one of them could be held responsible for allowing the HOA as a whole to commit an environmental crime, especially the board members who approved the cost-cutting on waste collection." The plan was brilliant. Instead of attacking the president directly, we would show the residents how they were being harmed by her actions, how each of them could end up paying huge fines or even face criminal charges because of her alternative solution to save a few bucks. We called for a special board meeting. Helen, as a resident, had that right. The president tried to block it, of course, but when Helen mentioned potential legal ramifications for all homeowners, the board decided it was best to hear what we had to say. The meeting took place in the same clubhouse where I had first confronted the president months earlier. But this time, I wasn't alone. I had Helen by my side, armed with an iPad, where she had saved all the evidence. And there was more. 3 other condo residents who had suffered from the illnesses caused by the accumulated trash. When we presented the video of the president supervising the illegal dumping at 3 in the morning, the silence in the room was deathly. When Helen explained the potential legal consequences, fines up to millions of dollars for environmental crimes, individual lawsuits against each board member, possible condemnation by the health department, the silence turned into a nervous buzz. "You're putting us all at risk, Marcia," said a man in his 60s, a board member. "You cut costs on waste collection without informing us of the consequences. This is harassment." The president tried to defend herself, pointing her finger at me and Helen. "So they're making up stories to hurt me." "Is the video also made up, Marcia?" I asked, crossing my arms. 3 in the morning, you, in your blue suit, supervising the dumping of debris on my property. Is that harassment too?" She turned red, then white, then red again, like a human traffic light. "I'll sue you for invasion of privacy, for recording without consent. For..." "The camera was on my property, Marcia," I interrupted. "Recording trespassing on my property. Do you really think any judge will consider that illegal? Or will they consider it illegal for you to trespass on private property, to dump trash illegally?" The board deliberated for almost 2 hours. In the end, the decision was unanimous. Temporary suspension of the president pending an internal investigation. In practice, she wouldn't be president in 2 weeks, when a General Assembly would decide her fate. I left that meeting feeling victorious. Finally, after months of silent war, we had won an important battle. The president was cornered, the condo residents outraged, and my lot, well, it was still there, waiting for this nightmare to end so I could finally start my workshop. But I underestimated Marcia's capacity for pettiness. Again. As Christmas approached, the tension in town grew even thicker. The president, desperate to keep her position, started spreading rumors about my plans for the lot. According to her, I wasn't going to build a simple workshop. Oh no, I was going to open a bar. A noisy bar, operating late into the night, with live music, karaoke, and all sorts of disturbances for the good citizens of Primrose Estates. The older residents, worried about their peace and quiet, started siding with her again. Some even came to talk to me, asking me to reconsider my plans. "Janet, but it's not true," I tried to explain, exasperated. "I'm going to open an antique furniture restoration workshop. The loudest noise you'll hear is a sander now and then, and only during the day." Nobody believed me. The lie had spread like wildfire. It was Helen who suggested the solution. "If the mountain won't come to Mohammed, Mohammed must go to the mountain," she said, as we drank tea on my porch. "If they don't believe what you say about the workshop, show them." And so the idea for the breakfast gathering was born. One Saturday, 8 in the morning, on my now clean and prepared lot, I invited all the condo residents to see my controversial plans for the property. Helen helped spread the word, and since she was well respected among the older folks, she managed to ensure a good turnout. I spent the whole week cleaning the lot, tidying everything up and bringing over some of the pieces I'd collected. Old solid wood tables, chairs with delicate carvings that needed minor repairs, an early 20th century cabinet I'd bought at an antique shop a couple of towns over, and was restoring little by little. On the morning of the breakfast, I arranged everything like a small exhibition. I set up tables with white cloths, baskets of bread and corn muffins Mrs. Martha had made, freshly brewed coffee. Even my backhoe, clean and shining, was strategically positioned in a corner, as a silent reminder of what could happen if anyone tried to mess with me again. It was a success. More than 30 condo residents showed up, curious to see if I was really planning to build the hell bar the president had described. Instead, they found a simple man, passionate about antique furniture, patiently explaining how he intended to restore historic pieces and create a workshop that would respect the peace and quiet of the neighborhood. The older ladies especially were charmed. Many had antique pieces at home needing restoration, and the idea of having an expert so close by was appealing. Some even took down my number, promising to call me as soon as the workshop was ready. The president, of course, didn't show up, but her plan to demonize me had failed completely. Now the residents not only didn't believe her, but they were also eager for me to start my business as soon as possible. I thought we'd finally have peace. How naive I was. 2 weeks later, when everything seemed to be settling down and I was already planning the start of the workshop construction, the bomb dropped. The president showed up with an old document claiming that part of my lot, legally, belonged to the condo complex due to an incorrect property line survey done years ago. The document looked legitimate. It had stamps, signatures, everything an official paper should have. According to it, about 10 feet off the back of my lot were, in fact, property of Primrose Estates. I was devastated. If that were true, I'd have to redesign the whole workshop project, or worse, maybe I couldn't build it at all, depending on how much space I lost. Helen, as always, kept calm. "Let's go to the city archives," she said, determined. "Documents can be forged, but public records are harder to manipulate." And so we spent a whole week sifting through the dusty archives at Harmony Creek City Hall. Property deeds, original plat maps, survey documents. It was painstaking, meticulous work, until we found it. It wasn't just any document. It was the original subdivision plat map, drawn up before Primrose Estates even existed, and what we discovered left us dumbfounded. There had indeed been a surveying error, but not the way the president claimed. In fact, the condo complex had built its entrance wall encroaching about 3 feet onto my property. It wasn't me occupying their space, it was them occupying mine. When we returned to the complex with this discovery, armed with certified copies of the documents and a survey done by a licensed surveyor, the General Assembly was about to begin, the one that would decide the president's future. Marcia was there, of course, in her inseparable navy blue pantsuit and that tight bun. When she saw us enter, her face went pale. I think she realized from our smiles that we had discovered something. We presented the evidence to everyone present. We showed how the condo wall was actually 3 feet inside my property line, how I could legally demand the wall be torn down and rebuilt in the correct position at the HOA's expense. The residents were shocked. The president tried to argue, said the documents were fake, that we were con artists trying to extort the HOA. But when the surveyor hired by the board itself confirmed our findings, there was no denying it. It was at that moment I decided to use my secret weapon. No, not the backhoe, although I still felt like using it to knock down the misplaced wall. It was something much more powerful: compassion. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, standing up so everyone could see me, "I could demand the demolition of the wall and its reconstruction in the correct place, as is my right. I could sue the HOA for encroaching on my property and demand compensation for all these months of trespassing and emotional distress over the trash dumped on my lot." I paused dramatically. The president looked like she was about to faint. But I'm not going to do that. The buzz in the room was immediate. Nobody expected this twist. Instead, I propose a win-win solution. I am willing to officially cede those 3 feet of land to the Condo Association, legalizing the wall's current position. In return, I only ask for 2 things. Now I had everyone's attention. First, that the current HOA president resign immediately from her position and never run for any board position again. Marcia stood up, red with anger, but 3 board members made her sit back down. They wanted to hear my full proposal. Second, that the HOA agrees to create a small community plaza on the property line between our properties, a space with benches and shade where residents can gather, chat, play checkers, or knit. I'll make the benches myself as part of my restoration workshop's work. The silence that followed was broken by Helen, who stood up and started applauding. Soon others joined her, and within seconds, almost the entire assembly was on its feet, applauding my proposal. The board accepted immediately. The president, without support and completely humiliated, resigned that same night, citing health reasons, the kind of health reasons that arise when you're caught committing crimes and blatantly lying to an entire community. 6 months after that first Saturday morning when I found trash on my lot, Harmony Corner was inaugurated. A small green space between my property and the condo complex, with wooden benches made by me, using woodworking techniques I learned from my father. My restoration workshop is booming. I have more orders than I can handle, especially from the ladies at Primrose Estates, who discovered their old furniture can get a new lease on life in the right hands. And the backhoe? Well, it's still there, parked in my yard. A silent reminder that sometimes we don't need brute force to solve our problems. Sometimes patience, strategy, and a little compassion at the right moment are much more powerful tools. But make no mistake, if the new HOA president of Primrose Estates, a lovely 68-year-old woman who makes a divine carrot cake, ever decides to dump trash on my lot, well, the backhoe is still there, isn't it? Like my dad used to say, son, always be kind, but always have a backhoe nearby just in case. And you, my friends, have you? Ever had to deal with abusive neighbors? With people who think they can walk all over you just because you're polite and patient? Well, know this. We don't always need the backhoe. Sometimes, we just need to show them we know where it's parked. And if necessary, we know exactly how to use it. Well, that's a story for another day. Right now I have a Louis XV armchair waiting for me in the workshop. The owner? The ex-HOA president, Marcia. Ironic, isn't it? Life comes full circle. And sometimes those circles are as perfect as the curves a good backhoe can make on a well-leveled piece of land.